Welcome back to the Road to Great Health podcast, where we discuss natural solutions to today's worst health problems. Number
Double
10
digits, let's
today.
go.
I'm Dr. Kevin Lenderman. Yeah, man, how about that? I'm with Dr. Rob DeMartino. I'm out of South Louisiana. He's out of Las Vegas. Man, we made it to double
I know
digits.
it went fast, and at the same time, it seems like we've covered a lot of stuff.
It does. It does. And speaking of covering different problems, I want you guys to know, if you've been following along, that, Dr. Rob and I aren't on here to promote the latest TikTok supplement or the latest fad. We're on here to talk about serious issues and how to solve serious problems, how to fix the unfixable and solve the unsolvable that we've been able to do for hundreds and hundreds of patients over the last 15 years. And well, I know how I'm able to solve so many unsolvable problems. And that's basically just do what Dr. Rob says to do.
Well, yeah. All those TikTok fads, man, they make me crazy because, a lot of times they'll talk about things and I'm like, great, that's a benefit, right? That's a benefit of doing that.
Yeah.
But what's the science behind it? Like explain to me the science behind it. And that's when I find that they kind of failed. I'm like, if you can't explain the science, we're going to have ourselves a problem.
Exactly. Yeah. So we want this to be a really serious podcast about serious health problems. And so that's why we don't discuss a lot of this, kind of out in left field stuff. We're talking about fixing really complicated issues and getting to the core of why sick people get sick. And we got a good one for you today. The subject is digestive health today, and there's so much to cover there. We're just going to kind of run through some different things whenever it comes to digestive health. And that's an important
sure.
one, right, Doc?
So much of it comes through what'll happen with our gut. There's a tremendous amount of nerve endings in there. We kind of mentioned it last time, which is how we ended up here this week. Of all you have to do is fix the gut. Oh yeah, like it's a lickety split type of easy going thing.
Yeah.
In today's world, that's a lot more difficult. But think about it, it's the place where the inside of your body has the most intimate connection with the outside world. Right, you're putting in stuff. And it's a very complicated process, and it's a very energy expensive process. And truth be told, most people are massively overeating to try to fill in their energy. And we've already disproven the whole you eat more to get more energy, right? Like I think we've massively disproved that, but it's been a long held dogma in medical for a long period of time. And that's some of the things that we want to kind of drag into today in more detail.
Yeah. And something struck me when you said connection to the outside world. You said something to me one time when we were in Vegas that I just thought was fascinating. I don't remember exactly what we were talking about, but I said something about, well, when you swallow it, it's in your body. And you go, no, it's not in your body. That tube is open to the outside world. It's not in your body till it crosses the digestive tract. And I was like,
yeah, it's designed to be quarantined, right? And that's where the ideology of leaking, anything leaking is bad, right? Ask my office, right? Pipes leaking is bad, right? You get floods. Right? Anything that leaks inside your body, blood vessels that leaks is bad. Leaky gut is bad, but it's a misnomer that we'll break down today. But it's meant to not leak. It's meant to be quarantined. That is not meant to touch the outside of your body. And if it does, you're going to get an immune system response.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's not just what you put in your digestive system, it's what goes into your bloodstream, really. And it is funny. Dr. Rob and I always get a big laugh when we're discussing, very serious problems. And, there's always one or two commenters that just goes, just fix leaky gut. And, 10 years of rheumatoid arthritis will go away. It's like, it's until it doesn't. And then
it's a much more nuanced, complicated topic. I mean, even the ideology of just fixing leaky gut goes way beyond what most people talk about. I mean, and the ideology of fixing leaky gut, if you happen to be laying there and you take your cell phone and you rest it on your stomach, that's going to almost immediately open up your gut lining. I don't care how much bone broth you drink and eat in today's world. It's about being energetically connected. And again, to put on my tinfoil conspiracy theory hat, a lot of this information has been suppressed, right? The ideology of what really, I've seen guys and I've seen lectures of scientists and researchers who presented unbelievable stuff around leaky gut, but it flies against the societal norm of, take probiotics and, just kind of, take these things that are going to bind up your gut lining. And that's all you really have to do. And they'll show that that's not the case, but then they get canceled. They're never invited back because half the vendors out there are selling supplements to fix leaky gut. So it's an unfortunate thing.
I will say this though about the gut. it is impossible to have an unhealthy gut in a healthy person. You're not going to be healthy if your gut is in really bad shape. Something is going to develop problems
Yeah.
somewhere.
And when we talk about energetics of this, right, it kind of comes down to those ideologies. Like I said before, your gut takes a tremendous amount of energy. The amount of energy that's in your digestive system is really what stops it from leaking, right? We have this picture, and hopefully you can see me. If you have this picture, we think about the gut as like it's being closed, and then something is going to come through and like kind of perforate that, and it's going to open up this way and eat it. Like a bacteria is going to eat its way through, and that's not what it does. It literally, these proteins interlink like my fingers. And leaky gut is when they get weak and they pull apart, and now that's what creates the holes. But when these guys are close together and those junctions are held tight, that's what ends up happening. And that's who get those people who say, oh, I have a cast iron stomach. Their stomach's not cast iron, obviously. It's just that those junctions can be held really, really tight. And they've done studies on people who come from tribes where they live by the equator and they live barefoot and they live with their shirts off and they eat directly what they can grow. And then they'll give them Coca-Cola and they'll give them Fanta and they'll give them antibiotics and they give them pizza and they give them gluten and they give them all these things that we consider start leaky gut. And then they can't induce leaky gut in these people because they are literally cast iron because they can hold that junction so tight. So all the stuff we talk about mitochondrial medicine directly plays towards the gut. And that's what we're saying. You're saying if you have a bad gut, you can't be healthy. And because that means your mitochondria are bad and your redox potentials are shot.
You're in energetic.
Yeah, for sure. And it's the first place it'll hit is the gut, for sure.
Yeah. Now, one of the things that people should know that we differ a little bit from the way the medical field looks at digestive problems is that in our view, this is a system. You have to look at it as a system. We have to stop looking at a colon problem as a colon problem and a stomach problem as a stomach problem and an esophagus problem as an esophagus problem. It's a system. It's like the postal system. All parts of the postal system have to work together for you to be able to put a letter in a mailbox and grandma get it in Iowa. And if one part of that system breaks down, grandma's not going to get her letter. And it's the same thing with your digestive tract. It all has to work together. So when a patient comes in with a colon problem, we got to look at the whole system and lots of other systems as well, because the body is so intermingled.
Yeah, absolutely. And very much neurological. I would tell you the mass amount of digestive problems, like IBS, like irritable bowel syndrome, whether it's the D or the C version, it's neurological at its core, right? These are neurologically driven problems, not really chemically driven problems. And then that's how we drag mitochondrial function into it. But I think gastro sometimes gets poor results with people with those types of problems because they don't take the nervous system account into digestion at all. It literally plays no role in it. It is purely just, it's a tube. It should have some bacteria in it. There may be some bad bacteria. I mean, it is about a basic ideology, and it is heavily innervated by your nervous system. And those are fundamentally nervous system problems that have other adjunctive problems that happen after the fact.
Yeah. I mean, we will say you have a nervous stomach, but we don't look at the nerves going to the stomach.
No, it's 100% true.
It's critically important.
All those ideologies, it's always, I've talked about before, but all those things that we always say, like oh, that weighs heavy on my heart, or I have butterflies in my stomach. All these colloquial expressions that we have come from scientific ideologies of what's going on with the actual system itself.
Right. And so when you talk about the nervous system, and we've talked about this before on the podcast, but your autonomic nervous system has two halves. It has the parasympathetic calm side where you digest and make hormones and sleep and you're happy and healthy and everything good you want. And then you have the sympathetic, which is your fight or flight. You can't function digestively if you are in fight or flight. Those are two polar opposites parts of your nervous system.
And the fascinating thing about this is, so the second most commonly prescribed drug in the US is proton pump inhibitor. So basically a drug that somebody will take for acid reflux. And it's pretty safe to say that the vast majority of the population is operating pretty solely in fight or flight, right? It's the stress levels are higher. It's a crazy world, all those different types of things. And the majority of people that we see are in fight or flight, especially who have chronic health problems.
Yeah, like 99.99.
Right. So there's always that outlier, but you pretty much cross board. But then again, at the same time, When we go into fight or flight, the first thing that happens is your digestive system shuts down. It is too
Yeah.
metabolically expensive. So your the ability to move food through your digestive tract shuts down, the ability to make stomach enzymes and digestive enzymes break down, and you will not make stomach acid. So think of this paradox, right? So you've got 99% of the population, especially with chronic health diseases, who have sympathetic nervous system activity, which means their stomach acid is going to be suppressed. But the second most commonly prescribed drug is for high stomach acid. They don't go together. And every
Right.
doctor I've ever pushed on this can't really answer this question for me. It's a side effect of the acid lowering drugs that it makes your stomach empty before it wants to. So the food
Yeah.
sits there. It's called food rotting. It's a gross term, but it's descriptive for what it does. The food sits there and it's going to sit in your digestive system. So now what's burning you is not your stomach acid. It's the food fermenting. Like you ever leave fruit out on the counter for too long, like you pick it up and it's in a pool of liquid? That's acid, right? And
Hmm.
that's what starts to burn and make you discomfort. So the proton pump inhibitors, they don't help your stomach acid. They actually lower your already too low stomach acid. It forcibly, as a side effect, causes your stomach to empty and now forces rotting food, inflammatory food, into your digestive tract. And then we sit here and go, geez, colon cancer went from the 37th leading cause of death to third in 20 years. And they try to blame genetics. Not buying it.
Right. Right. Genes
Not in
didn't
20
change.
years.
Yeah. We have the
Not in
same
20 years.
genes,
And if you
right?
look at the
Yeah.
timelines for when those meds got real popular and they started giving a lot of them, you'll see this spike up. But again, the person says, I feel better. But they take into no account
Right.
that, if you're in fight or flight all the time because there's not enough energy to run everything, your body's going to panic. When it panics, your digestion. Think
Yeah.
of it. No one, when you wake up in the morning, typically the first thing everyone does is go to the bathroom. If you wake up to your house on fire, no one's like, stop, hang on, I got to go to the bathroom first and then I'll run out. Right? You're driving your car,
Yeah.
you got to go, you're hungry, you got to go to the bathroom, whatever it may be, and you see the police sirens behind you. When you pull over, you don't have to go to the bathroom anymore and you are not hungry. Right? That
Yeah.
all immediately shuts down.
Interesting. Yeah.
And it's just an innate thing
Yeah.
inside of us, and we completely ignore that medically.
Yeah. So to recap what Dr. Rob is saying here is that we've been sold for the last 40 years that everybody's stomach acid pumps are just going out of control. They even have animations on the Prilosec commercials where they show the stomach acid pumps and they're just pumping away. That is now proven to be the opposite of what's actually happening. Because everyone's in fight or flight, everyone has low stomach acid. So when you eat food, your undigested food rots. And that's what you feel bubbling up into your esophagus. The reason the medicine works is there's a second medicine in there that just empties that rotted food into your small intestine.
Yeah,
Say that
exactly
right?
right. And like I said,
Okay.
can you have
Now,
high stomach acid?
then
Yes, you
what?
can. But the majority of
Yeah.
these cases are going to be opposite of that.
Right. Then what happens is you could develop something called SIBO, which means because the food now is in your small intestine and it's not acidic enough, you can get something called SIBO, small intestine bacterial overgrowth. So because there's no acid in the food that's in your small intestine, you're going to get too much bacteria in there, which is not really supposed to be there. It's supposed to be in your large intestine. And then when that bacteria produces air, there's nowhere for that air to escape out of your small intestine. And that's where the bloating comes from.
Yeah, and that can be quite
Right.
distending and quite discomfort. People come in
Yeah.
and say, "I look pregnant," and I'm not, and
Yeah.
and they're quite painful.
Right. Right. And so all of that starts because of low stomach acid, not high stomach
Yeah,
acid.
I got into a pretty good heated argument with a gastroenterologist. This happened. I know this happens to me a
No.
lot. I try not to. I really do, but I can't help myself half the time. But he was explaining to me how it's so important to use these medications because high stomach acid like that will cause ulcers. And so I asked him, I said, well, let me ask a question. What bacteria causes ulcers? And he says, oh, H. pylori. Now, again, if you're out there and you've dealt with stomach stuff, you probably know H. pylori. They make you do this breath test to see if you've had it. And I said, that's right. It makes like 90% of ulcers are caused by H. pylori. But does H. pylori survive in high stomach acid or low stomach acid? No, high stomach acid kills H. pylori. So you're selling me that these people with crazy high levels of stomach acid, which will kill H. pylori, have ulcers, that are 90% of the time caused by H. pylori when those two things make no sense. It was the funniest thing. It looked like there was a glitch in the matrix. He was like, and I'm like, you see what I'm saying? Like, this isn't doctor stuff. This is
Yeah.
just connect the dots logical
Right.
stuff. And to his credit, he came back to me. He said, I'm going to go look this up. You give me a lot to think about. And I said, yeah, because again,
Yeah.
we were taught it, that it's always high stomach acid, right? Your stomach's always producing. And in the majority of the time of the cases, that's not what's happening.
Right. Right. The
Math,
math,
right? And I'm like, and I said, there's science to back it up, but a lot. I was talking to somebody yesterday, and they're like, I love watching you poke holes. I love watching you poke holes and
Yeah.
everything. I'm like, look, because my favorite course in college was logic. That's how I function. I
Yeah.
function through logic, and these things don't logically make sense. And so I question the science side. I try to bring to the general population, this logic is not correct.
Right. 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 Now, we mentioned leaky gut syndrome, and just to kind of explain the concept behind that. So, when you eat food, let's say you take a bite of lettuce, that lettuce is supposed to be broken down into carbohydrates. And then that carbohydrate is supposed to get into your bloodstream for nutrition. But if your gut is leaking, you don't get carbohydrates, you get chunks of lettuce in your blood that doesn't belong there. And of course, your body's going to have to deal with that because it's not expecting lettuce, it's expecting carbohydrates. It would be like if I hooked you up to an IV and instead of injecting carbs, which I do that all the time in the hospital, it's good for you, I injected particles of chicken into your bloodstream. Do you think you might be inflamed? You would be septic very, very quickly. And that's what leaky gut syndrome is. Now, because of glyphosate in our food and EMFs, it's not something that's really fixable. We can manage it, we can lower it, but it's something you're always going to have to try to take care of because you're going to eat food and you're going to be around EMFs. And so leaky gut is not the end all be all that they once thought it was.
If you could keep your mitochondrial health really strong, you have a great chance of keeping your stomach lining closed, right? And you will be one of those people who can have a cast iron stomach, and you can evolve onto someone who has one of those cast iron stomachs. But if you're out there and you've got one of these allergy panels where you're allergic to like everything under the sun, I mean, I've sat with people like, I have 5 foods left, doc. That's all I can eat. And if I go allergic to these 5 foods, I don't know what the hell I'm going to do. I'm screwed. And it has nothing to do with those 5 foods. And when you have allergy panels where you're allergic, that's not allergens. You're really bad at digesting, right? That is a digestive system dysfunction because you should nowhere be allergic to that many different types of problems. And if you can fix those mitochondria, you fix that, wildly, all of these allergens all of a sudden start massively going away for them. So again, wild allergy panels on food sensitivity testings is a big giveaway that mitochondrial function is in deep trouble. And because of that function is in trouble, that's why we leak. You have to get out of this idea of we're always playing, always going to try to close it up and we're just going to heal it. It's going to be healed once and for all. This is, like you said, a constant everyday battle that you have to be consciously doing things to build your mitochondrial function to keep those barriers tight because they're always trying to go loose, right? It's one of those things that over the course of time, skin sags, things get a little looser, right? You're always trying to pull it closer together. It's just like cosmetics on your face, except the same thing. We're just trying to keep those interior barriers tight. The good news is the same barriers that keep your stomach tight keep your blood vessels tight. They keep your blood-brain barrier tight. That keeps all the toxins and stuff away from your brain. You will get multiple levels of benefit from this because if that's leaking, other stuff is leaking too.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Very interesting. And, back on the subject of stomach acid, I thought of one more thing when you said aging. One of the things that I tell patients a lot of times is we naturally have less stomach acid as we get older. So if reflux was caused from too much stomach acid, we would have that as teenagers. Teenagers can eat a 3-day-old pizza and not get reflux. We don't get reflux until we get older. It's one more proof that it's low stomach acid, not high stomach acid. Teenagers don't get this stuff. As we get older.
The patterns never, you sit with somebody, you can tell, and make no mistake about this. The only reason we're having this conversation is because there are tests for low stomach acid, but there's no pills for low stomach acid. If there was a pill for low stomach acid, then everyone would get diagnosed properly as low stomach acid. But since there's no solution for it, they don't even bring it up. It doesn't exist in medical lexicon and just, everybody's high stomach acid. And that's just the kind of the way it is. And we're not going to even touch on that. I sat with the gal and she had a binder You probably helped me tell the story before, but she had a binder and she sat with me and she's going through all her digestive stuff. And I figured her binder was going to be all of her lab work and stuff. And then she said, I want to know what you think about all that. And I was like, well, this might sound a little bit crazy. I said, but I think you're a low stomach acid producer. And let me explain to you what I mean by that. And she starts crying. I was like, no, it's okay. It's not the end of the world. Like, it's a fixable problem. And she's like, no, you don't understand. And she opens up this binder and she has pages of printed stuff that she found on the internet about could she be a low stomach acid producer? And 5 gastros wouldn't pay any attention to her. So they ignored her. Yeah. And then once we fixed her ability to make stomach acid and closed up those junctions, she never had any digestive problems again. Actually, to her credit, she went back to all 5 of those gastros and yelled at them and told them, this doesn't make sense, and told them like, hey, look, this is actually what it was, but you poo-pooed me. But there's just no medication for it. And if there's no medication for it, the tendency is to ignore it. But people come in and they say, well, I have to take it every day. The medication, I have to take it every day. It's not when they're eating certain foods. Most of the time they have reflux at night when they're trying to go to sleep. Well, you're not digesting then, right? They'll tell me water makes me have reflux. That would dilute it, right? That would dilute it. That doesn't make sense. If water makes you have reflux and you have to take it all the time, not like, if I have something really spicy, that's different. But, I have to take it all the time. Water gives me reflux. Those things mean you have low stomach acid, not high stomach acid. And again, there's just no solution. So it's the head in the sand.
Yeah. Well, there's so much whenever it comes to the digestive system, when you start looking at it as a whole and you start adding in all of these complexities, and it's very logical. Your digestive system is going to do very logical things. And if a doctor tells you something that just doesn't seem to make sense when you really start thinking about it, it's probably not what's really happening.
Yeah, that's the truth. And like I said, logic and science, they don't always seem like they go together, but I promise you that they do. And I think they've disconnected those two things on purpose, because most of the things that they tell you are completely illogical. And they're like, well, science, science backs that. It's not true. Logic and science almost always go together. And so if something doesn't pass the smell test, it's probably not scientifically accurate. And then, like I said, we poke holes, then we go through it. So that's why I always try to appeal to the logical side. Say, look, does this make sense? No, it doesn't. Okay, and this is the science as to why. Right? These are the reasons. I promise you it typically backs. But I think it's a purposeful thing that they try to disconnect those two ideas and say that they have nothing to do with each other when they totally do.
And then, kind of like we were talking about last week with these word salad diagnoses, things like irritable bowel syndrome. I mean, who came up with that? Your bowel is irritable. Okay, well, let's find out what's irritating your bowel. And irritable bowel syndrome, I mean, am I the only one that makes sense to? If you had a pebble in your shoe and that was irritating the bottom of your foot, you wouldn't want to just take meds to keep hiking. You would want to remove the pebble. And so you got to figure out the why of these digestive
If it doesn't make sense that if you're in sympathetic nervous system, if you're in fight or flight all the time, are people who are in fight or flight, are they irritable? Yeah, they are. So when you're in fight or flight all the time, and that's the direct part of your autonomic nervous system that is involved in your gut, does your gut get irritable too? Yeah. So even these words that we're using still are synonymous with it. But again, there's no medication for your sympathetic nervous system. Gastros don't pay attention to digestive system and nervous system interactions. Ulcerative colitis and Crohn's, these are bad diagnoses. These are dangerous disorders. Ulcerative colitis is a dangerous disorder. And again, I makes my skin crawl. People come and say, well, yeah, doc, they don't know what causes this. They don't? I was like, I can tell you what causes it. And here's what's going to really make you mad. When you go home after this and you Google what I say and you ask a really specific question, whether that's, now I find just a lot of times it's like the AIs, the ChatGPTs. I'm going to ask ChatGPT. Great. Ask it this really specific question, because all internet questions depend upon the quality of the questions that you ask. And when they ask it, man, when they come back the next day, ooh, are they hot? They're like, are you serious?
Yeah, fuming.
They're like, it literally says this causes it. I was like, oh, I know. I know. But again, is there a med for it? No. Is there a way that they could deal with it? No. And I almost feel bad at certain points. I'm like, look, you're going to go home. You're going to get mad when you look at this. It's ultimately, remember, you could feel how you're going to feel for it because you've just been kind of drugged through the mud for the last couple of years with this diagnosis. Remember, at the end of the day, this is good news for us. We know what this is. We know how to fix that. It puts us in the driver's seat, but it hurts to find that out.
Yeah. Yeah, I wasted so much time and energy and
And you
money
feel
and effort and
terrible.
pain
Yeah,
and
you feel
suffering.
terrible, you know?
Yeah. All that. Yeah. Yeah. Doc, talk a little bit about the connection between the brain and the gut and how that works. Now, I know that, 90% of your serotonin, which is your happy chemical, your anti-anxiety chemical, is made in the gut and transferred to the brain to be used. So, you can't separate brain health problems from gut health problems, but go a little bit
Yeah,
deeper into
so
that.
it goes into the part of it's the autonomic nervous system, right? You have the two branches of your autonomic nervous system. And when we go into fight or flight, your serotonin levels are going to drop, right? Because they're your happy hormone, like you're saying. So we're going to get alterations in
Right.
those. And there's been a tremendous amount of ideology around the type of gut bacteria that they find in your digestive tract, which should be plentiful and it should be in a good, healthy balance. And all kinds of different mood stabilizing types of disorders, whether it's depression or anxiety or OCD and the like. And what they're starting to actually find out now, and this is a fascinating subject and a little bit out there, but not really. We talk a lot, and we've talked a lot on all of these podcasts about the importance of getting full spectrum sunlight, right? The full spectrum sunlight
Yeah.
that we get on our skin, right? Our cells, our mitochondria will make energy. They know when to do that by getting exposed to light, right? It's like an engine. It doesn't do anything unless you turn that key, right? You turn that key and that engine turns on. The turning the key for us is light. But bacteria in our systems, especially in our gut, will kick off 5,000 times more light than our cells do. So bacteria in our digestive system makes this incredible light show that we can't see inside of our body. But that light, just like we're getting exposed to it from the sun, will create this wild show of light inside of our system. And it's a major way of how our body signals. So just like it's very difficult to find somebody who has depression, who has high vitamin D levels naturally from sunlight. You find somebody who has high vitamin
Mhm.
D levels naturally from sunlight, depression is not a diagnosis that you're going to typically see get associated with them. But the gut
Right.
bacteria is so super important for putting out our internal light. That's part of what feeds us. Now, we
Yeah.
need light from the outside. That's why it's always important. One thing I can tell you, I know we always end these with what's important stuff. When you go outside, you get sun, what's typically covered is our stomachs, right? Get that light directly on
Stomach,
your
yeah.
stomach. There's all kinds of light sensors. I'll spare you the science, but there's a ton of light sensors on your belly. It's designed. Serotonin, the feel good hormone, dopamine, the gratitude hormone, and the get stuff done hormone, they are light sensitive. They have to absorb a specific spectrum of light in order for them to work. So you can have a ton of them, but if they don't get activated by light, they don't work. And then we don't get that additional light signal later on in the body. Now, again, of course, which brings it here. What happens when you just start taking tons of antibiotics? Or what happens when you eat food that's loaded up with antibiotics? What do you kill?
Mhm.
Bacteria. And it doesn't care if it's good, bad, or
Yeah.
the type that puts out good light, or it's going to make them some of this stuff get out of balance, right? So
Mhm.
much of what we see with this is just this crazy use of it. I mean, think about babies born. The first thing that they do is they smear antibiotic cream on their eyes, right?
Yeah.
For a disease that if mom has, if the baby gets it into their eyes during birth, they could go blind. But guess what? They screen mom for that disease. If she doesn't have it, we don't have to
Yeah.
smear antibiotics all in their face. And the first thing that they do is to get antibiotics, right? And then if
Yeah.
we don't breastfeed, we don't get all of that immune system stuff. We don't get that bacteria that translates, right? You get your bacteria going through the birth canal. If you get out from a
Right.
C-section, you get your bacteria from the hospital, not where you want to get it, right?
Right.
You get bad bacteria from the hospital, you get
No.
MRSA. So
Right.
all of these
Right.
ideas, again, they're levels in order above. But again, I was telling somebody this yesterday. If I did the same, if we talked about the same things, like you said earlier, if we talked about the same thing that every TikTok video talked about, there's no answers in those ideologies. That's why people are still constantly looking. Yeah, it's going to be different. Yeah, it's going to sound different. But when you vet this, in which I highly recommend everyone just doesn't take my word for it or your word for it, they go look this stuff up. When you see how fundamentally right
Yeah.
all this stuff is, there's a reason why we do things vastly different than everybody else. So if I did what everybody else did, I would get the results everybody else did. But this what
Right.
we call fringe science, it's not fringe, it's just more advanced or a different way of looking at it, especially getting
Yeah.
out of pharmaceuticals. You'd be amazed when you start asking higher level questions on the internet how many of these answers are already answered and plentiful.
Yeah. Yeah. They're just not talked about. Everything goes towards pharmaceuticals for sure. And, speaking of that, you mentioned antibiotics, and our audience may not realize this, but 80% of the antibiotics produced goes into our food supply. So if you put a big pile in the middle of the floor here of all of the antibiotics doctors prescribe as medication, it would be as big as this building that I'm in. That's 20% of the antibiotics used. 80% goes into agriculture and our food supply. So if you've eaten, you've taken in antibiotics, and that can destroy your gut health. Now, one of the coolest tests that we do to determine all of your bacterial balance is what we call our gastric mapping. It's like a 12-page report on all of your enzyme levels, all of your bacteria levels. It tests for parasites, amoebas. I mean, it's such a beneficial report for that. And the neat thing about this report is back in the old days when they would do a stool sample, they would culture it. So they would take that sample and they would put it on a petri dish and grow it in a lab. They would miss about 70% of what was actually in your gut because not everything's going to grow on a petri dish. But what this gastric mapping does is they DNA test those bacteria, not your DNA, but the bacterial DNA. So they can tell you the genus and species of everything that's in your gut from one end to the other, and how many, and the levels, and are they good ones and bad ones. And so that's why just randomly taking probiotics is not a great idea, because those are 11 bacteria, or 14 for the good ones. You're supposed to have 100 or more healthy strains of bacteria in your gut. And probiotics don't do what we once thought they did, where you're regrowing colonies. When probiotics die, they release a protein, and it's that protein that makes your gut feel a little better. If you were regrowing colonies, you could take them a few times and be done, but you can't. It's actually the protein that those dead probiotics are releasing that are making your gut calm down. But it's not really fixing it.
Right. And that's why the research on probiotics over the years has failed, right? Like the long-term research, because like you said,
right,
even the best ones, I mean, those are the high quality ones that have like maybe like 10 or 15 different types of strains in there. So maybe you feel better in the beginning because, okay, any good bacteria is going to be helpful right after an antibiotic. But then all of a sudden you take it for long-term, and then that changes on you because now you've created this monoculture. Right, you don't have this big colony of different types in there that need to do doing all the different things they need to do and putting out all the different lights that they need to put out. It's only putting out a certain amount. So that's why the long-term use of probiotics fails. And the research is like, well, a little bit of a good thing, more of a good thing should be good, but it's short-sighted because of this ideology of it's not doing what we always thought it did.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the theory that Dr. Rob and I use on that is kind of build it and they will come. Like if you build a healthy gut, you will grow the ones that you need to grow. If your energy's strong, your toxins are good, if you build the environment for those good bacteria to grow and let them come naturally, it's way better.
Yeah, and it works way better. And it's a finality type of solution, right? Because that's something you can do and use forever and ever and ever. And again, it's always going to be this good and bad terrain battle. But versus having to constantly be doing something and taking something independent from an outside in kind of solution, again, it's the way it's supposed to be without us messing it up. Ultimately, I hate to say it that way, but yeah, it really comes down to that.
Yeah. And it's just people are always looking to take something to feel better. And that starts from the time we are born. Oh, baby, you're sick. Take this. It'll make you feel better. Oh, you have a fever. Take this. So even when it comes to supplements, we're still looking to take something to feel better. Even though it's not a medicine and it's a supplement, we act like that's better. But taking something to feel better is different than solving problems in your body and letting your body do what it's supposed to do.
Supplements, any of those things should be used as an ideology to catch someone up faster, right? If we don't have something that we need, if we put it in there quickly, we can start rebuilding and get from A to B a little bit quicker. But it's not designed to basically be the thing that will hold them over forever and ever and ever, right? So there's an ideology behind using that. And of course, it's better than meds because there's no crazy side effects and things like that. But, these bags and bags of supplements that are being on, you read the supplement labels. I mean, they sound great. You can make a reasoning that everybody should be on every single one of them. The marketing teams that write them up is really good. But it's that ideology. Remember, like, we are designed to be healthy. We are designed to live in accordance with
Yeah.
nature. And if we do those things the right way, then we don't have to do any of that. Part of this podcast is to try to teach people those ideologies, light, dark, EMF, all the things that we've talked about. All this stuff is working against us. But this idea of health coming from the outside to in is a very pharmaceutical driven thing. But again, it is also built on dependency. And we want you to know what
Yeah.
you need to do. And nothing is going to be perfect in this world. But if you're on the high side of good, a lot of the times your health is going to look drastically different if you start doing those things right now, what it will look like in the future. I promise that. It's just only science.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Well, man, today was fascinating, Doc. There's so much whenever it
Yeah.
comes to digestive health, and there's so many people out there struggling with it, and so if you're out there and you have digestive issues, just know that, there is a different way of looking at these problems, and there are people out there doing the right thing to get your digestive system working, get your energy system working, and get you on a healthy pathway. The reason this podcast is called The Road to Great Health is these are the ways we get you on the road to great health so that you can have a healthy future.
Absolutely.
Right, Doc?
And I'm sure we'll have to circle
All
back to
right,
this
good.
eventually at some point with the GI check. I'm going to
We
be a lot
will.
of comments. I'm sure we'll circle back, but it's a big one.
We will. Yeah. Hey, thanks everybody for joining us, Doc. It was good talking to you again. We'll see you guys next week. Thanks, guys.